So there is an exercise after this link, okay? So, but we will start with the Docker. Okay, so Docker or a container by default or by nature is ephemeral. Ephemeral means due to some reason, if the container gets restarted or it is placed from one host to another, okay, then the data inside it will be lost. Okay, so you may find it surprising, but containers are by default ephemeral. So whatever data it has after restart, it will be lost. Not always, but most of the times, depends upon the host on which it is running. So in a production environment, many times the container will be on multiple hosts. Okay, so many times if the container is if the base host on which the container runs, okay, is out for maintenance, then we'll have to move that container, or container is placed somewhere else. At that time there will be data loss. Okay, so Docker container by default is ephemeral in nature. Okay, so that's why it is recommended that we use Docker volumes. Okay, so there are various types of Docker volume. One is named volume, other is host volume. Then we also have anonymous volume and temporary or TMPFS. Okay, but the most important ones are the named volume and the host volume. So the named volume means we'll be creating a volume using Docker volume create command. Okay, that is called as the named volume. Okay, and when we create any particular directory on the host, okay, on which the Docker is installed, that is called as host or a bind volume. Okay, and anonymous volume, it is automatically created. Okay, but we won't go deep into it. Okay, and TMPFS is, it is created using hyphen TMPS. It is suitable only for the temporary data, and mostly it stores some data on the memory. Okay, but we'll be seeing some exercises on named volume and host volume. So the question arises, why we need Docker volumes? So as I explained, one is for data persistent. Docker by default is ephemeral. Ephemeral means, again I'm explaining, whenever whatever we write on the Docker container, it may get lost after its reboot. Okay, or due to reason, if it fails and if we restart it, the data on it may fail. So other is we can share the volume between multiple containers, so data sharing is possible. Okay, and for isolation from the host. Okay, and there are some other advantages as well, like efficient backup and migration, you can say, simplified data management, performance optimization, and facilitates, it also facilitates the collaboration. But the most important thing is it gives us, it gives the data persistent, which Docker container do not have by default. Okay, so I'll start with some exercises, then it will be more clear. But I know you all must be wondering why container is ephemeral, means why the data is lost. Okay, but that's how it's designed. Okay, so that's why there is a need for Docker volumes, so that we can store the data on the volume. So you can think of it as an NFS share or a NAS share, which is attached to any container. So if the container dies, the data on the NAS share, on the NFS share, always remains, right? Similarly, whatever data we store out on a volume, that will remain intact even if the Docker container restarts. Okay, so I'll start the exercise. So before that, let's do some cleanup.
Priyank, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, while accessing the web outside, once hitting that app will be receive data, right? So after that, the app will be passed to database, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not such thing concept here.
No, no, not that data database. It is just a kind of a, suppose you have a USB drive, right? You just put the USB drive into your system or a laptop, and the
Mm-hmm.
data on it remains. Okay, even if the laptop crashes, the
Mm-hmm.
data on the USB will be always there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, whatever you keep data on the Docker volume, it will always be there.
So that means once reboot or switch over to another place, there is
Yes,
no. Okay.
there will be no data loss. Even in an NFS share, we do the same thing, right? The share is shared by a NAS share or an NFS server, and it is
Mm-hmm.
mounted when the OS restarts. We make some entry in the FS tab or at the startup. Okay, the same concept is used here,
Okay.
and this is mostly used in Kubernetes. Means you'll get the real usage there. In Docker, not much. Okay, it is only Docker is mostly used in the development environment. In production, we have Docker Compose and Kubernetes, but mostly Kubernetes. So if you see here, everything is clean. We can see doc any volume using Docker volume ls. Okay, so there is no volume created, so empty response. So now let's start creating Docker volume. So there is an exercise after it. Okay, the link I have shared. After that, the next exercise is there. So how to create a volume? The command is sudo docker volume, like, create data underscore wall. Let's data underscore wall, and if I do docker volume ls, you can see volume is created, data wall. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll create one more container. So as always, we'll create a httpd container this time, not an nginx. So the command which will run is docker run hyphen d. D means run in a detached mode, hyphen v. Till now we were using hyphen p to map the host port to the container port. Now we'll map the host volume, that is data underscore wall, which we created just now, to container directory. So inside the container, this data wall will be mounted on slash app slash data, and we are giving a name to the container web server, and we are using an image httpd. Like nginx, we can also have httpd, and I'll just press enter. So this is important. Hyphen v data wall, mapping the data volume on a host to a directory inside the container. Okay, so what it is doing is it didn't find the image locally, so it is downloading it from the Docker hub. Okay, and then it'll just mount this data wall on slash
So
app
yesterday we
data.
created that image. That one is a
This is the new image. Okay,
new image. Okay, you deleted from Docker, right?
yeah, I deleted everything. Okay, so if you see here, everything is deleted. Now if I do sudo docker ps, it is running. Okay, now we need to find where exactly is the data. It is, even though it is a volume, okay, it will be a directory somewhere on the host itself, that is on this particular host, because we are creating just a local volume. So how to check that? Sudo docker inspect, okay, and the container id. So remember, docker inspect and container id. So what the docker inspect does, this is also one of the interview question, how to get all the details of any container. So the answer is, using docker inspect we can get all the details about the container. So if you can see, it has an IP address, this one, it has a gateway. Okay, and what is the other information which is useful for us? It is using an image httpd. Then we are interested in the volume. So if you see, mounts means a volume is mounted. Mounts means a volume called data wall is mounted. Okay, the source is on a host, it is var lib volumes data wall data, that is on VM. A directory is created like this, and inside the container it is mapped as apt data. Okay, so let's go to this directory on a VM itself. We are not yet in the container. Okay, cd. Okay, so by default even sudo won't work for cd. Okay, so we'll have to do sudo su. With sudo su you'll become root. Okay, now just go to this directory ls, and this is empty volume which is created. Okay, but what we have done is we have mapped inside the container slash apt slash data. Okay, so if you see the source is empty, let's go inside the container as well. Now sudo docker ps sudo docker exec, get the container id, connect its interactive terminal, and then do slash bin bash. So let's go inside the container, and where it was mounted slash app data, just do ls. It is also empty. Okay, because we have just attached an empty volume, nothing is there. Just do control d to come outside. Now what I'll do is I'll just create a file called cat file 1.txt. I think in exercise there is some other file, but it's okay. This is my file, control d. Okay, and just again do control d, so we are back into our home directory. And now just do docker ps sudo docker exec. We can also do it from the root. Earlier we did it from root, now I'm doing it from my home directory. Bin bash, just go inside the apt data directory, just do ls. Now we can see inside the container also we have the same file. Okay, now what I'll do is cat double greater than sign, I'll just append something inside the container. This is persistent data, and just do control d to save. So inside the container I have modified the file1.txt. It has an extra line. This is persistent data. Just do control d, again go to the same directory, that is cd var lib docker volumes data vol underscore data, and just do ls. You can see file1.txt. Okay, so even if now the pod dies, this data will remain intact. Okay, so when the pod is sorry, not the pod, container, I'm getting confused with the Kubernetes. In Kubernetes we call container as pod. So when by any chance if the container dies, okay, the data will remain intact on this volume, particular volume. Okay, so this was how we create a simple volume. Okay, not simple volume, the first exercise, that is create a volume using docker volume create command. Okay, the other method. So now we are doing the next exercise. It doesn't have any relation with the previous one. Now will create one more volume, but this will be using bind mounts or bind volume. So what happens in bind volumes, we just create an directory, okay, on our local host. So in this case we are creating a directory called host underscore data. And if you see where I am inside home Prayag, and in home Prayag I have created a directory called host underscore data, and we'll add some data inside it. So using echo command also we can add some data into it. Okay, hello from bind mount. So what I have done is in host.data underscore data, I have created a file called bind underscore txt. Let's check the contents of it. Okay, hello from bind mount. So a directory is created locally, and inside that we have a file bind.txt, and where it is created using pwd find, pwd point command we can find it is in home Prayag, and just do ls. Okay, and if I do echo dollar, whenever we see dollar in terms of bash, dollar and pwd, it will show home Prayag. Okay, so pwd is home Prayag, and if we want to echo its value, so it will be dollar pwd, that is give the value of, so both are giving same output, but we are using, will be using the same inside the next line. So that's why I gave that example. So now what we will do is we created this host data. Now let's map it to apt host underscore data on a new server. Not it, earlier it was web server. Now we are creating an app server, and here you are using nginx image. We can also use any image httpd, but in this example the name of the container is app server and we are using nginx image. So what we are doing is, so whatever the value of pwd, it will get appended here home Prayag, and inside home Prayag it has a host underscore data. Okay, where it is this one, and inside the container it will be mapped to app host underscore data. Just do enter. So it is downloading the nginx image not didn't find it locally, so it is downloading it from the docker hub, and it will start the container. After while starting the container, it will map the host underscore data on this particular VM to apt host underscore data. So if you see ls, just go to host underscore data and do cat bind.txt. We have a file called bind.txt in host underscore data. So what we'll do is we'll just again go sudo docker ps sudo docker exec hyphen it nginx. So go inside this container, attach its bash shell. Now we are inside the container, ls cd slash apt host underscore data, and if you see we have bind.txt inside it. Okay, which was in the host current directory. Now if I modify it using echo command, means just echo, add something into it, add data, appending something inside this file, cat bind.txt. So we have a extra line inside it. Okay, bind.txt. Just do control D and check host underscore data bind.txt, and you can see it has, the data is persistent. Persistent means even if now if the container dies, the data on this host directory will be intact. It won't change. Okay, so there will be no data loss. And as docker containers are ephemeral in nature, so docker volumes are useful to keep the data persistent. Okay, so you all also perform the same exercise, and any question let me know.